and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How amazing to have a room full of people. Thank you for coming.
Yes. Anyone want to take bets if it stays this way the whole meeting? It is nice to see you all. Thank you for coming out. All right. Here we go. We just got through with a study session regarding we're looking into possibly selling our cell towers on the island, and that's what that study session was about. Moving through that, we start. Any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda as stated.
Support?
Thank you.
Second.
His support was enough.
I'm really serious
Seconding
about
the
this.
support.
This is
That's
concrete.
Good. That's good. That's good. That's why you pay for the lunches.
I do.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So the agenda is set as stated, as we originally stated. All right. 7-0. We have no presentations. We will start with public comment regarding the agenda items only. We'll go with our regular 3 minutes, give your name and address. And I am going to say that that you stick to the agenda item, and we don't have anything about anybody personally. I don't want to get into that, and I will stop you if you do get into it. So, with that, public comment. Any hands? Yes, sir. And yes, ma'am. Gosh, they look familiar. Getting closer. Good evening, Ricki and Rob.
Get
How
3
are
minutes
you?
each?
Pardon me?
Do we get 3 minutes each?
Well, you came up together. You're getting 3 minutes.
I don't think we need that much.
Go ahead.
20128 Canal Drive. I'm Rob. This is Ricki Luton. Just want to let you know, 17 years ago, we were contacted by Grosse Ile Recreation Department to come out and basically save the farm. 3 entities had tried to run this farm, one being the Township as a boarding facility, and it just didn't work. 2 years into the contract, they had all failed, and Grosse Ile was left holding the bag. They had 7 horses, I think, that they were paying for. Uta remembers this, right? It was just a mess. We came out, we talked to them. They actually brought us in and told us that we could have the first year for free if we'd come and just do anything to get this off of them. At the time, we had a great business going in Lansing. My sister kept that business running. We came to Grosse Ile, and we've been going strong ever since. Ricki has a mission statement that they came up with, and I'll have her read that.
Good evening. So this is the original mission statement that Grosse Ile Rec had approached us with, that the operator agrees that the primary purpose of the Centennial Farm is to provide the facility for a recreational use, benefit, and of the citizens of Grosse Ile, and agrees to fully cooperate with the owner in maintaining Centennial Farm for this public purpose. Both the owner and operator agree that the overall success of the farm is also dependent on serving the residents in the neighboring communities. So passive recreation was the main goal for the farm.
We did it. We've run this 17 years, and we've done a great job. The whole community is involved. We have our kids that show around the country. We also have kids that live around the block that come and ride horses, adults, whole families ride with us. They might be going on vacation and do it once or twice a year. They might ride every week just for exercise. We do anywhere from 80 to 100 lessons a week. We have 30 to 40 people through the barn that have nothing to do with our program. They don't own a horse with us. They just come through to see the horses, maybe look at them in the paddock. That's a benefit to the community. These people can come see horses in their environment in the farm and appreciate them, and it's free. They can come do it for free. We allow them to come in during business hours and check it all out. that's what we do, and that's what this whole barn is built around. There's as many kids enjoying this right now as the pool or any of the other sports on the island. It's just free for them. We have to pay for soccer. We have to pay for baseball. They can come out and enjoy these horses and see them scot-free and feed them some carrots. Boarding facilities don't always work. People don't always see their horses. Sometimes people won't see their horses for a month or two at a time. They're being taken care of. We require someone that is involved and wants to get their horse out and enjoy it and go show it or go compete with it or maybe just go trail ride it. That's what we do. I wanted to clear up a few things with you guys and make sure you know what we do at that farm. A lot of people, when you come out there, they finally see it and they see the families walking through and they see the kids and they see the grandparents. That's when you know this farm is working.
Thank
Does
you.
anyone have any questions?
It's just comment at
All
this
right, thank
point.
you.
Thank
Not-
you.
Not only do we just run the business out of the farm, we also have given back to the community throughout our time there. We've run Girl Scout camps, Boy Scout camps. We've done the SNAP program for disabled children, free of charge, just to get them access to the horses. Everybody has known that autistic children, disabled children, working with animals really helps them. We've done that for them. We've actually had one of our students, she ran one as part of her entry into U of M. That was her business program, so she needed to do so much community service, and she set it up, ran it, we helped her with it, and it was all pro bono just for her to have that on her resume. And we've done that for several other things. So not only
You
do
have
we do that,
30
we also
seconds.
coach the high school equestrian team, and that is given we're the only coaches that are not paid, and it's September through October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else back there around here that want to?
Gentleman in blues raised his hand a few
Okay.
times.
She. Who was the gentleman that raised? Okay, you'll be next. Is that okay? Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Dawn Flood. I live at 8619 Woodside. We've been Grosse Ile residents the last 6 years, in part because one of our deciding factors in moving here was the barn. My daughter rode there prior to us moving to Grosse Ile. It's an outlet for her like no other. She spends every waking moment after school at the barn, and a bonus is being able to get there easily. So I just want to show my support as now a Grosse Ile resident for the barn and to continue operating there.
Okay, thank you
Yep.
very much. Sir?
Evening, everyone. I'm Scott Georges. I live at 25460 East River Road. I've been a lifelong Grosse Ile resident, graduated in '07. Coach Porcerelli was one of my hockey coaches. Good to see you. I just wanted to speak to Centennial Farm, and it's been there my whole life, as far as I remember at least. It's just a great asset to the community. I don't personally ride. My wife and I are raising a 3-year-old daughter, and she wants to ride when she's of age, and we take her up there multiple times a week because she's asking for it. So we're one of the unpaying users at the moment who just go and enjoy it for absolutely free. And the environment that it is today with the current operators is a very friendly one, very open and inclusive one. We certainly feel like we're owners of it, that it's free to use. We always have people asking us, would your daughter like to feed carrots? Would you like to pet the horses? Everyone's very friendly and open, and that's, I think, just an environment that we want to foster in this community. I think Centennial Farm, our open spaces, our bike paths, our schools, these are all the things that make our community so great. I think we just need to hold on to these things, and the current operators are doing a good job in what they're providing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can you see?
Back there?
Yes. Did you see if there's anybody over here? Is head raising? Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Mary Bradford. I reside at 1844 Oakville Waltz, New Boston, Michigan. And it's because of Rob that got my daughter and her daughter into the horseback riding. that my granddaughter has progressed, and it's such a great program that they've got going down there. So when you talk about communities, not only is it Grosse Ile, it's outside of Grosse Ile. It's, like I said, New Boston, and I've had many other friends that have come here to Grosse Ile. And it's just a great event, and they're great caretakers of something you gave them, you entrusted, and they're doing a fine job of it. So, just want to let you know that this benefits Grosse Ile. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nobody over here?
Zelasko.
Yeah.
The gentleman
I
from
thought you
Blauvelt.
said- I thought you said gentleman.
Oh, it's just Bob.
Good evening, Bob.
Good evening.
A young man.
Bob Z. Blauvelt. No, you said something else. Jim, you wanted to fill the hall. Looks like you filled it tonight. I think this is great, and I am so glad to see other people want to give up their Monday nights to come up here and focus on Grosse Ile. I think it's great. Carl, you asked a question during the last meeting. You may get your answer tonight. How many people are really interested? How many people are from Grosse Ile? You got about 50 here tonight. Maybe they're 100. Maybe they're 150. That'll make up about 1.5% of the total 10% or 10,000 population on this island. So when it gets down to the dollars and the cents and the timing, it should be interesting tonight to see how it goes. And thank you, folks, for coming out. Great.
Thank you, Bob.
Now there's a hand over there.
Okay, whoever's hand that was, please come forward.
Brianna Torsrud, 8641 Woodside Drive. Both my daughters ride at the barn. They are obsessed with being up at the barn. They would live there, sleep there every day if they could. As soon as they get home from school, they are immediately at the barn every day. They go, they brush their horse, they ride, they do the competitions. It's really their life right now. And it all started with just a walk. We just went on walks and we saw the horses, and that's how they got into it. Rob has been amazing with our girls. He has just built their confidence, and it's just been amazing. And I really think that Grosse Ile needs something like this. It's something that other communities don't have. Not every community has this, and that makes Grosse Ile special. And that's one of the reasons that people come to Grosse Ile. It's different, right? It's different than the downriver communities everywhere else. We have that little bit of rural feel here, and it makes it a little bit different. So, thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask for anybody else to come up, if there is anybody, for those of you that are in the audience and are not going to come up and say anything, I just want to know, raise the hands, who's in support of the Lutons and the farm? If you just raise your hands. Thank you very much.
Both sides of the room.
Yeah. Anyone else want to come up and make a comment? I can't see it. Okay.
Oh, Kathy Walker and one here.
Kathy.
Did you have your hand? Yes. Come on up. I saw a hand
and you
here.
saw Kathy
No,
in the
I
back.
didn't.
She'll be next.
I'm not good at talking to people, but I'm at 13342 Peach in Southgate. So we don't even live here.
And what's your name, please?
Lindy Collins.
Thank you.
We don't live here. My daughter, right there, rides. She loves it. She lives at the barn. We do not own a horse. She's gotten to compete. Rob's taught her how to do all kinds of stuff with horses. I don't even know the stuff that it is. And she loves it. She lives there. And like I said, we don't even own a horse. And she spends every waking hour that she can at the barn.
Thank you.
Coming up.
Thank you. Kathy?
Kathy Walker, 26051 Thorpe Court. I appreciate people coming out, as you all do. I appreciate people being involved in sports. I know I was. And I also appreciate my tax dollars being watched. So all I'm asking is, my question is, when we do contracts, why don't we write the, what is it, RFP or something? To bid it out, not just go to the same person every year. Not that you might not take that person, but just to see what's out there. And that's what I'm about. And again, great that there's sports involved, great and all that, but I am still concerned about my tax dollars. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Yes, ma'am.
Thiel, 25100 Hazelnut Court. I'm a senior. I've taken lessons there. Rob, Ricki, Anthony, they're all great instructors. I've learned a lot. It's great exercise for seniors. It's quite an experience. I've taken Zumba classes, yoga classes, but I'll tell you what, you get on a horse and you'll work some muscles you didn't know you had. So I am a big GI granny for the Luton's farm. I mean, they're great instructors. I've been to the shows, and I'll tell you what, the kids that do show, they're the ones that are pulling in all the ribbons. That farm, compared to other farms at the shows, I'll tell you what, I walk the barns and I look at all the ribbons, and they're taking the ribbons. They are a gem. Don't lose them.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dan Gaglio, 8325 Horsemill. I'm here in support of the farm. I know Rob and Ricki really well. They're my neighbors. It's not just because of that. I have little children in there also, and growing ones that are going to be going there. 2 points real quick. See all these little kids here? They're supporting it. They actually help these little kids, and they're influencing these little kids to come in and ride their horses also. It's big for me that the community does that. And then what Mr. Bob said, is there 100? Is there 200? Is there 300? Not everybody can come here on a Monday night like you guys said, but I agree that there's more than 300 people here in this island that support that place. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else? Yeah, Greg.
Greg Karmazin, 21228 East River Road. I want to comment on a couple topics that are on the agenda. First, on the cell tower study. The financial analysis that's in this presentation.
Okay, Greg, I'm just going to stop you because that wasn't on the agenda.
It is an agenda item, though.
No, it's not. It was a study session item. You can make your comments, but for right now, it has to be agenda items.
Okay, well, it is on the agenda for this.
Okay, great. We're not going to argue, but it isn't. At the top before the meeting. The meeting down is the agenda.
All right, well, I'll reserve my comments on that for the second
right now,
comment
we'd
period.
like to just have
The other topic I wanted to talk about is the non-union wage adjustments. I read the memo in the board packet, and I think it's right on target with we have excellent, outstanding employees here, and we want to retain them. And we want to make sure that we do provide the level of compensation that reflects what is necessary to keep them here, and when we have openings, attract new people. The one thing, though, I didn't see in the analysis was there was no analysis. It was analysis of salary comps in other communities, but there wasn't analysis of benefit comps. And I think that in the future it would be good to have analysis of the benefit comps in there. Also, it was noted that these wage adjustments are budgeted. And I think that's true from the standpoint of the salaries being budgeted and the adjustments being budgeted. But we know from past experience that we didn't get to this unfunded pension liability overnight. It happened by small increases over a long period of time. And I'd like to see in the future, when we do these kinds of adjustments, that we also make allowances for the pensions so that we don't get into a situation where when we make small adjustments, what looks like small adjustments on salaries or market adjustments, that we don't have any adjustment for the pension obligation. Finally, on Centennial Farm, I think the equestrian facility is excellent. The program on Grosse Ile is great, and I come from a family that had a horse here. When my granddad moved here in 1920, he had a horse, and it's a wonderful asset for the community. The only concern that I've had about the contract is that when it came up for discussion last meeting, the township couldn't identify the operational costs and the maintenance costs long-term. And I just think as a general principle, anytime in any contract that the township enters into, there should be a clear understanding of what operational costs are and what maintenance costs are that are obligated by signing a contract. And that's just a general principle of financial management.
Yeah.
So those are my comments for tonight.
All right, thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, that looks like we're through with a public comment at this point, and we will move to consent agenda. David, if you will.
Thank you. This time I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda 23-001, which consists of minutes of the March 27th, 2023 regular meeting and check registers dated through April 6th, 2023. And that might also be the shortest consent agenda I've ever seen.
Certainly the shortest we've seen in 6 months. All right. Anybody have any comment or question on?
Support. Yeah, right.
Okay. Any comments or questions on the consent agenda? All right. Seeing none. We have a motion before us to approve consent agenda 23-001. Which consists of the minutes of March 27th, 2023 regular meeting and the check register dated through April 6th, 2023. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda passes. Thank you. Action items. Our first action item, it happens to be the Centennial Farm Operating Agreement. Uda, if I may, since this item was on our last agenda, we had a long, good discussion on it. We did table that action item to go back and discuss with the Lutons, adjusting the time period for the first for the initial term. So this item is being brought back. It is not being changed. We were looking. I was asked to go back and ask for a reduction from 5 years for the first term to 3 years. They very well indicated to us that they couldn't do that because of their business cycle. It wouldn't fit in. It would actually end up hurting them. So I fully understand why they turned that down. So it is now before us as it was in our last meeting with a 5-year term. With that said, we had the long discussion on the various items. I would just say, keep in mind that this is an operating agreement. It is not a lease of the property to them. It is an operating agreement for them to be in there doing those things that you heard all the people talk about today. I will also say, and I've talked to Carl about this and Kyle a little, the items that they did bring up, looking at the farm and seeing which way we want to head on it, those are things that are important to this community. But I do believe we should be talking about those. But I don't see that it should hold up this operating agreement. That's something, quite frankly, that should have been done. And Kyle, of course, wasn't here when this whole thing started. But those are things that should have been brought up before this operating agreement was up. And it's something that we can talk about now, after this, and look ahead and see what we want to do in the future. But right now, we should stick to what is before us, which is an operating agreement, which both parties, I will personally say, being familiar with the previous agreement and looking at this agreement, this is a much better agreement for all the parties. It's much more specific which agreements should be, so that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. So I'm going overboard here. But so we have a motion to vote on the operating agreement for Centennial Farm.
And I'll support that.
Okay. And I've given you the background. I was trying to give the people the history. But that's where we are today, so I don't know any statements or comments anybody wants to make.
Let me just clarify too, because we're bringing something back. We tabled a motion, so we're bringing it back to the board. It is the same motion that was made on March 27th.
Yes.
Supervisor Budney pointed out it's the same operating agreement that was up for discussion. And so basically the Community Recreation Commission recommended to the Township Board the approval of this operating agreement. And that's where the ball started, and that's where we're going to pick it up. And I'll just make my comment and say I wholeheartedly support this agreement. We are very cognizant of the issues that were raised in our previous discussions, and we are diligently monitoring to make sure that we don't run into the pitfalls of the past. The Community Recreation Commission was not unanimous on this. However, we do agree that we need an operator at the farm, and we have a good operator at the farm right now. And we've got a very good agreement. Let's just say the substandard nature that was pointed out of previous agreements, they were not considered substandard at the time those agreements were made. The board approved those agreements, so that is part of the history. What we're trying to do is move forward and make sure that we can sustain what we have going on at Centennial Farm, not just for the men and women who ride horses, the men and women who operate a horse farm, but also for the families and the grandparents, the parents, and the kids who just want to come to the farm and see the horses and be a part of that, rural environment. And I've, in the last 2 weeks, heard from many residents that have nothing to do with horses, but absolutely love the farm and want to make sure that the Recreation Commission knows they want us to maintain it as a equestrian-based farm. So that's coming from me and from the Recreation Commission.
Kyle?
Yes. So, I'll begin by saying it is really good to see everyone here. It's very rare that we get a room packed like this and get people participating. So it's really good to have you all here. I want to be clear and I don't know, just not just repeat some of the things I said in the last meeting, but really go into them a little bit more. I care really deeply about that farm. I want to see it succeed. The reason that I suggested opposition at the last meeting and will likely oppose the motion tonight is because we don't have a long-term plan in place to maintain what we have at the farm. We still don't have that. There are good things in the lease, though, in the operating agreement, I should say, to clarify, as Jim said. And one of those is that one of the first immediate things is that the rec department and the operator there have to come to a good list of what's needed there. So I'll be watching that closely and seeing the passion that's here. I hope that everyone has that same passion to be able to maintain that farm in the long term, because that's what we're going to need. I didn't raise it lightly. I didn't like the way I had to raise it. I learned a lot doing it, partly by going through the budget process. Having gone through the budget process, I probably would have pushed harder at the time that we approved the fences. I didn't really understand fully at the time when we were approving the $170,000 or $160,000 for those fences that we'd be having to pull from other parts of rec at a time when rec is hurting. They're looking to raise money for a playscape that we lost last year, and a bunch of other things. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a very small portion of the township budget, 5% of it, limited dollars to go around. And everything that we don't watch wisely and take care of wisely has to come from somewhere else. And I'll go into more deeply. My 3-year-old is one of the kids that loves that farm and loves the horses there. I don't know if Rob and Ricki know this, but Rob has been there with him and helped him feed carrots to the horses. And yeah, I value that. I value very much having that history here, that rural feel, and why I raised the issues I did was because I value that. There is one more thing I'll lift up. And my understanding is the windows have started to be fixed, which I'm grateful for. But the Herb Society, which I know has nothing to do with the operator here, is worried about the chicken coop, a historic chicken coop that's there on that farm. And I believe they went out for a quote, and this was mentioned at the last rec commission meeting. A professional to redo that chicken coop is going to cost $8,000. Now that doesn't seem like much, but these are the sorts of things that we need to be watching. So Keith Fazinski, Kiwanis leader, is looking to do it, through volunteers. And the township's going to try to come up with a paint. So, that seems like a small thing, but saving those $8,000 there for that chicken coop helps us put those $8,000 to maintain the Luton riding, the barns for the riding and the operators. So these are the things I want to bring up and encourage you all here. You've all been great. I think it was about 20 of you that wrote on my Facebook page, and very respectful, and I'm grateful for that, and grateful to have you here. That's even more important. A lot of people talk on Facebook and then they don't show up. So I'm really glad to have you all here, see that passion, and hope we're able to translate that into a way to maintain that place long term. I'll leave it there.
Just maybe a qualification. Centennial Farm is part of rec. It's not something separate from rec. All rec dollars go to all the things that rec does. If it happens to be that Centennial Farm needs money, that's where the director prioritizes and takes care of that money. If it happens to be the pool needs money, they take that money, maybe out of the cell tower money to help the pool. It's all rec. It isn't certainly Centennial Farm is not taking money away from anything else, just like if it's the pool or the marina, they're not taking money away from Centennial Farm. So keep that in mind.
I have a question in that regard.
Yes.
So if we were to find a problem at Centennial Farm during the execution of this 5-year lease that exceeded the entirety of Rec's budget for that year, we would still have to repair that under this lease using general fund dollars, correct?
No.
So we could just let the barn fall in?
We would look for Rec. Either they take it out of their reserve, which they have.
Which is about their total budget's about $365,000.
Yeah, but they have a reserve. They have a reserve. We're not talking about, when you're talking budget, you're talking about the revenues that they have for today. That doesn't include their total reserve.
How much is their reserve?
I have no idea. Do you happen to know that?
I do not know the total. I know that we did use a good portion of it for the fencing.
That's what I was going to say.
What I would just like to say is we have to maintain Centennial Farm, and you guys dismissed this argument 2 weeks ago, but we have to maintain Centennial Farm whether we have an operator there or not. If the red barn starts to, fall apart, touch wood that doesn't happen, we have to do something, whether there's horses or not in that building. It's an asset that the township owns. You brought up the Herb Society and the chicken coop. That is not directly related to this operating agreement, but it is something that Recreation and Centennial Farm do have to take care of, whether or not there is somebody operating out of the horse center. And the Recreation Commission used this as Chad, the chair, used this as an opportunity to create possibly a community building activity, something that we've tended to get away from through the pandemic. We don't have barn buildings per se, barn raisings like the Amish, but we've in the past always had community involvement to put together projects that we didn't necessarily have the funding for. And those kind of projects, like having Keith pull together with Kiwanis and other organizations, actually create sweat equity and build support for facilities like Centennial Farm. There's the animal shelter there. There is the recreation activity building there. We have a dog park and a dog activity area. We have a playscape there. We have picnic shelters, a fountain that needs maintenance. I mean, there's a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts at Centennial Farm. And so, bringing up the chicken coop is one tangent. Another tangent is that the Rec Commission also realizes it has to come up with other ways of funding what is necessary at Centennial Farm. And that's a task we're going to start addressing, and we started addressing at our last meeting by discussing writing grants, having community activities. No one likes to hear it, but the potential for a maintenance millage, a very small millage that is dedicated to asset maintenance. We do it for police and fire. We do it in other departments. We have a maintenance fund for our open space and our bike paths. So there are a lot, we are now in the process of addressing these future needs. And we will need the community to really be a part of that. And you should be a part of that, and you have every right to be a part of it, and so that's why I was so excited to see so many people here today. It's not just that we love the animated wallpaper aspect of having horses at Centennial Farm. It's an intangible asset to our community that we have there, and it makes people passionate. And it brings you into activity with your government. It's your government. We're here to do your work. We are you for all intents and purposes. So I'm still in support of this operating agreement because it enables us to continue moving forward. It codifies some things that were not codified before. It has led to an improved relationship between the operator and the commission and the management, and we hope to, we are just going to keep working in that direction. So I know I've probably said too much, but I thank you for listening, and thank you all for listening and considering this.
And just one more follow-up for Jameson. Like anyone else, if that department didn't have the money to do it, they'd have to go out and borrow money and pay on a loan to get, if a roof blew off or something, they didn't have the funds to do it or didn't want to bring their resources down, to zero, they go out and borrow money and get it fixed. It wouldn't be the general fund that pays for it. It'd be them, and there'd be, you'd have to look at it and see how we're going to do it. But
we've done interagency loans within the township.
And there's just going out.
Insurance.
And there's just going out. There's insurance. There's all kinds of things. But that's what they would look at. It'd be that department's job to figure it out.
So I guess I would just make a couple of points. So I think the last time this pact was probably when we were hiring the police chief. So it's great seeing a ton of community here, right? I'm not against horses. I'm not against the Lutons. I'm not against Centennial Farms. I'm just concerned about a couple things. Earlier we were discussing selling our cell towers to try to bolster the MERS funds. We're at 23 out of 24 police officers, so it's not like we have a ton of surplus funds, And I'm not saying this isn't something worth spending money on, but I do think we need to be diligent about it because we're spending taxpayer money, and we don't know the current state of everything over at the farm right now. And in our operator's agreement that we have here, it says, I believe it's page 4, upon execution of this agreement, the parties agree to meet and assess the state of repair of all portions of the property with report of the same to be generated. Operator shall not be responsible for repairing any portions of the property in disrepair at the time of the execution of this agreement. So what that means is right now, when this agreement is signed, Grosse Ile Township is responsible for all of the repairs at Centennial Farm, which we currently don't exactly know what all those repairs are, right? So we could potentially sign this, go over there, and find out like, oh, holy cow, we're on the hook for $500,000. And I know you're saying, hey, we've got insurance, and it's a rec commission problem, but if we end up having to use all the money from rec to the point that we can't support the other recreation activities, we're still taking away from other residents who also pay the recreation millage, right? So I just think that it would be prudent for us to have a thorough understanding of the state of things before we sign this agreement. And then the other concern I have is I certainly understand business cycles, right? And all these people want to know that they're going to be able to ride their horses at Luton's farms over at Centennial Farms for the next 5 years. But what that does is a 5-year lease prevents the next board from having any control over what happens. So we're locking the next board into a lease that will just skip right over them and then be renegotiated on the backside of the other lease. So those are my concerns, but I think that, we've got a lot of community support here. It sounds like we've got a lot of board support. So that's.
I just let me, as far as that statement that you read, the items that are being thought of that were what were in the previous or actually the current lease, since they're on a month to month, is there right now that, and most of them are like the windows, are something that the rec department should have taken care of prior to the Lutons even being there, that the rec department didn't do their job, if you will. And that was before Kim. It's not Kim's fault. But those are the things they're talking about. And nobody believes we're going in and we're going to find out, oh my God, we got to rebuild half the red barn and put a new roof on the white barn. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at these items that were being talked about as we were negotiating and trying to figure out how do we put them in. And in fact, the rec department and our negotiating team came up with that language to get this operating agreement moving and have a fairly decent idea of what that's going to be. And it's not going to be an overwhelming amount.
Right, and I would add that verbiage is more related to a condition assessment, not too dissimilar to when you lease a new apartment or something. You go in there and you analyze the condition of the facility so that you understand what damage might exist there, so that new tenant wouldn't be responsible for, that damage that had already been there. Understanding that they are the previous operator, but just to clearly define, where the damage came from, and that the fact that anything that might be pre-existing that isn't attributable to them from previous tenants potentially or previous operators are not their responsibility. The rest of the contract is very specific about the differentiation between the owners or the township's responsibility and the operator's responsibility as far as those items that each party is responsible for moving forward. So it does specify that, and it isn't a catch-all for anything that's broken, no matter whose responsibility in the lease is stated that stuff, those items are the township's per se.
Anything else, Jameson? You didn't need to. Joe, did you,
Nope,
you're all set, Joe?
I am.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, James.
I'm all set. Thanks, Joe.
Sure.
Yep.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. I came at this at a little different angle. There's a lot of different dynamics with this. First off, you have a lease, you have an operating agreement. I look at it as a lease. They're somewhat congruent. So you have the township, and I wasn't involved in this agreement or the negotiation of this agreement. And we have a group, and to tell you the truth, I can't even name the entire group, but I know the agreement was with the Lutons. So it's brought to the board, and I fully get and I can appreciate that some of the things at the farm have not been taken care of. I get that. I can understand it. Now, I'm not going to knock the other boards, but they've been there 17 years, and I guarantee that some of the things that needed to be repaired by, let's call the tenant, who is us, wasn't done. There isn't a doubt in my mind. I'm not going into the last township manager. I'm not going to go into the last township supervisor and board, but something happened, or rec directors, and as Jim stated, this is previous to Kim. This happened, obviously, our current, so I want to make sure we're clear on that. And Derek wasn't the township manager at the time, so I want to make sure you got to give credit where some credit's due. So the bottom line here is we have an agreement. The agreement was done in good faith. It came to the township. The township got this agreement. They looked at it. It was palatable for both sides. Now, who am I that to not be on this board or not be involved in this agreement? And I get it. You can have your opinions, and they're very well thought of. And I understand Kyle and Jameson's. There's a lot of things there that may need to be done. That's why we absolutely need a capital improvements plan at the farm. The rec department has to come up with a plan. I've asked for a list of things that, do you know what needs to be fixed? And there was no written list. We have to come up with things like this to secure us and the liability that we have. But the bottom line in this agreement and the dynamics that push this agreement is that I can't punish Mr. and Mrs. Luton for something that the township may not have been on top of or on top of correctly, if that makes sense. Now, it's obviously just my opinion, but my point is that when you have an agreement and you do it in good faith, and we come up, and it did go from, and I hope I have these numbers correctly, but $1,300 to $1,900 a month, so there's going to be more income.
1,100.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
1,100 to 19.
Oh, thank you.
Over 17 years, right?
Yeah, so 1,100 to 1,900 is the lease agreement, and that will help out with some of the, if you want to call them fixes, however you want to say it down there. But once again, my bottom line is, for what has occurred in the last 17 years, I can't take it out on, I don't care if it was, whoever. And I get it, these people are happy with this. Horses make people happy. They're too big for me. They don't make me happy. But when you need a ladder to get up on one, it's not fun. So the point is, it's good for the community. It's good for the people. I get it. Horses do something for people that other animals just don't do. It's an amazing issue. So with that, and not taking it out on Mr. and Mrs. Luton tonight, then I'm going to be voting yes for this. So that's how I feel.
Joe,
Thank you, Joe.
I'm going to push you a little bit, kindly and respectfully. You could have said that last meeting, and the agreement would have been done, I think, right? We wouldn't have had to wait 2 weeks, right?
Well, no, it went through, and to tell you the truth,
Tabled it before he got a chance to
it
speak.
came to me and said there's 5 of us that want it to be tabled, and I said, well, if you want it to be tabled, 5 wins. It's like playing cards.
My kind suggestion there.
I'm just telling you. So I went along and said, you want to table it, we'll table it, and see what the meeting was going to be with Mr. and Mrs. Luton, and I think Derek, or was it Jim?
Both of us.
And both of them did have a meeting, Kyle, so that's just where I was at.
No, and I want to be clear, I'm grateful too that they, I'm grateful that they did have that meeting and are still here and willing to sign that agreement today. So I am grateful for that. Yep.
And Kyle and Joe, I just want to say, it was good. I think overall it was good that we tabled the motion, and it is good that we took your comments and Jameson's comments Carl's comments in stride. I think that was a very important step for us to take. And I also want to say 2 weeks ago, Derek wasn't here to hold up my end of the argument, and I'm grateful that he's here. And so I think the process is working, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's really exciting, especially for you young women out here. This process works, and it's exciting when you see an agreement come together, when the leaders of your community are actually talking to each other and hammering out something that will be of value to you as you grow up and become adults in your own communities. So, and I think there's something about young women who ride horses. They develop a very strong independence, and I think that's a valuable thing. So that's just me talking to to you kids.
Well, that was nice of Carl to give you his time. Carl, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. And a couple of things. First of all, I haven't seen this many young people and parents in one place since I coached soccer with Giza for 10 years, and it's good to see this kind of enthusiasm and excitement out here. Very good to see everybody, and thank you for coming out. That's a sign of support that causes people to look at and judge what we are doing. One of the things that I look at with the 2-week adjournment that we had on this issue was it gave me an opportunity to ask questions to people that know what they're doing, that have been involved with the farm, that have been involved with negotiations, and I had an opportunity to talk with 5 other people in addition to 2 hours with Rob Luton on Good Friday. He was kind enough to give me a tour of the farm, showing me what the conditions of the stalls, the barns were, opportunity to walk around the property and get an idea what his philosophy was on horses and how long he'd been in the business. And I had heard a lot of comments that there was neglect of animals and some issues that were going down there. I spoke, as I said, with Mr. Luton for 2 hours. I got a chance to look at all the animals. I got a chance to see some of the children in there with riding lessons and exercising. And I understand a little bit about animals as having been a circuit court receiver and selling not a horse farm, but a cattle farm in the Upper Peninsula. And my maternal grandparents were dairy operators. They had various times 80 to 150 head of dairy that they milked. And I understand that when a person buys a horse can cost, as Rob and I spoke, anywhere from $2,500 to many tens of thousands of dollars. And there were questions about how the farm was being operated. I take the position that if you have a vintage Duesenberg, you don't drive it in the rain, you don't drive it in the snow and salt and in the middle of winter. You take care of it because that's a lot of money. And what I saw at the farm, I believe the animals are being well taken care of. That's my first point. So when it comes to an operator, I'm satisfied that we have an operator in place that is well able, certainly the best we have right now, but well able to take care of the farm and the animals there. And I'm very appreciative of that. I think that's a terrific plan in place. 2 things that I want to discuss in reviewing the operations and the experience there. I had a chance to not only talk with Rob, but 5 other people that are familiar with the farm. And all of them said the same thing, that this is an operation that has a lot of value to the community and it's well run. It is an operation that is in concert with what the township's purchase millage was in 1996. And I want to read that to you very briefly. Millage at that point was 0.65 mils per $1,000, so that there would be a purchase of property planned for recreational purposes, an animal shelter, an equestrian center, and preservation of the Centennial Farm. 1996 millage. I view that as a commitment. When the voters pass that, we have to honor until we find something bigger or better than the program that is there right now. And I don't know that we will. But I look at what Mr. DeBose has said, and I agree that there has been a need to have what Bob Zelasko would call a 5-year plan. We're entering into a 5-year contract. Let's have a 5-year plan to make the most of that property. Because that property cost us $1 million 25 years ago to purchase, and it's costing a lot of money. Again, I said 2 weeks ago, horse racing and horses are the sport of kings. It costs a lot of money to operate. I would like to see that we have more community participation with that property. One of the paddocks have been taken down. There's a lot of space down there for things that could be done. I would like to see the Community Rec Commission come back with a study and a recommendation that we can then follow up on and have our own study sessions for the use of that property. And I'd like to see that within 5 months. That is, again, before the end of September. I recognize that they have the annual Island Fest that's coming up. And I don't believe anybody would have time to put together the time and the amount of detail necessary. But certainly throughout the balance of the summer into September, I'd like to see Rec come back and give us some kind of a study for what our options are. And if the options come back with what are the operating costs, I think that would help all of us make a better and informed decision. Last thing I want to say is that when I look at the negotiations here, it's not a perfect world. It's not a perfect process that we've engaged in, and I certainly wish that we could have done something a year and a half ago. As I said to the supervisor at the end of last meeting, we had a study session, and the board met to try and determine what we would want to have happen with our police contract. And we came back with various proposals that were taken to the negotiator for the township. The same thing went on with the TPOAM. And I appreciate the idea that a 5-year contract would saddle this board and the next board, no pun intended, but saddle them with a contract that they would not be able to do anything with. I think that what we have is the best operational agreement that is available at this point in time. It has been negotiated. It has been negotiated in good faith. Would I like to see more money? I'm a taxpayer. I have 3 different properties I pay taxes on here, and I'm very sensitive to what we pay in taxes. But at the end of the day, you negotiate in good faith. There's been a lot of negotiations. The township supervisor had to step in and push this thing along. I think it's time to go ahead, look at reality. The reality is we have an operator and they're doing the job. We have a commission that needs to come up with a 5-year plan and an analysis of what we're providing and what we're spending on, and then let the community know what we're doing. Because right now, the best option we have out there, I think, is this operator and with this contract. It's not perfect, but I think it's the best thing that we have right now. And again, I thank everybody for coming out tonight. I intend to support the agreement.
Thank you, Carl. Just as a side note, that next board will be looking at this contract because this will be up December of 27, and they're in there through November of 28, so they will be looking at this. Whether it's through the extension or renegotiating, whatever they want to do, so they will have that. Any other questions? I think we've heard from everybody, so let's get to it. We have a motion to approve the operating agreement for Centennial Farm with the Luton, and I want to get the exact name.
Riding Academy, Luton
Luton, right.
Academy.
For the operating agreement for Centennial Farm with the Luton Riding Agreement Academy. All in favor?
Aye.
You know what?
just say,
We're
you
going to
gotta
take
do
a roll call vote. We're going to take a roll call vote rather than me having to go back and do it. So I'll start with Kyle.
Nay.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Carl?
Aye.
Uda?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jameson?
Nay.
And Joe?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion passes 5-2. Thank you very much. Thank you, board, for a good discussion. Thank you again, everybody out there, for coming in and showing your support on any issue. Really appreciate it. I almost feel like we need another break. Thanks, guys.
I want to hear a loud yeehaw.
All right. Okay, we'll let them. Carl?
Hey, Jim.
I was just talking to Carl, cause I was trying to. Who is that? Yeah. Oh, well, we're gonna put you next. Yeah, no, we're gonna put you next.
Jim, that's correct.
Okay, okay. Is Joe? No. Where's, oh, there's Joe.
He's staff now.
Okay, board, I'm going to ask for a little bit of a change in our agenda, and it's just moving around the action items. We have some people here who are here concerning action item number 4, Gibraltar Bay Connector Fence Bid Award. So rather than them having to hang around with our other items, I'd like to take action item number 4 and move it up to our next action item. Is there anybody that has a problem with that? No. Okay, then that's what we will do. Jameson, I will ask you to introduce action item number 4, Gibraltar Bay Connector Fence Bid Award.
Okay, I move that the Grosse Ile Township Board hereby authorizes a contract totaling $97,700 to low bidder Veterans Fence for the installation of 2,400 feet of fencing along the eastern property line of the Grosse Ile Municipal Airport.
Support. Pick a name.
I'll take the support.
Yeah.
So,
did you get it? Did you get that, Brent?
So for several years, and I do have to give some credit to Carl, who was part of the BPAC when this whole thing started. BPAC's been trying to tie together different sections of the islands using bike trails, right? It's the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, with the goal of being, or for residents and for people that come visit the island to be able to traverse the island and go to all the interesting places we have using bikes. So what we would like to do is move about 2,400 feet of fence over on the east end of the airport back to create room between the road and the fence on East River Road. And do you have a graphic there, Derek?
I do.
Awesome. To be able to create a trail that goes from the corner of Grow and East River down to the Gibraltar Bay nature area. Which I think is a really cool project. I'm super excited for it. And I understand that the buyer family has decided to assist us with that project. So, and I'll turn it over to the supervisor regarding that.
Actually, I'll turn it over to Carl, because
We'll turn it over to Carl regarding
instrumental in working on that. And if you would explain how the buyers got involved in somewhat of an unfortunate way, but thank you very much for what you're doing with that. I think it's a great tribute to your daughter, as well as a great tribute to our community. So
currently we have a maintenance road that runs along the existing fence and ditch on the east side of the airport, and that maintenance road will be used as a unimproved trail to connect Grow Road at the corner of East River and Grow all the way down to the Gibraltar Bay Center, Gibraltar Bay area where we have the Detroit International Wildlife Refuge. And that will be, again, an unimproved trail, but we're going to be using existing fence. And the fence along there will allow us to use this trail in a proper way that is also conducive to airport operations. The fence has been vetted with both the township manager and the airport manager. They have both indicated that we can do this. I had the privilege when I sat on BPAC of applying to the Ralph Wilson Fund for a grant. We applied for the maximum, which was $50,000, and they came back and approved a grant in the amount of $45,000, which at the time we needed $68,000 in order to build this fence. That was pre-COVID. And with that...
If I might just interrupt, just for people looking in and people here, the red line, is that the fence?
That is the fence.
And the trail is east of that fence?
That is correct. If you look at the red line is just west of the existing maintenance road. There would be a gate on the far right of that red line where we see Grow Road that Derek has just moved to. And that is where there will be an opening that will allow us to use that, and then that will connect all the way south to the Gibraltar Bay, Detroit River wildlife. And that gate will also be accessible so that we have an ability to have a fence along the entire program, the entire portion of that road. That is some distance, a little bit less than a half mile. And when we originally looked at this, the price was, as I said, $68,000. And we had 45 with the Ralph Wilson Fund. COVID hit, and we thought, gosh, we're so close. Let's see what else we can come up with. And that brings us to Andrew and Helen. I'd like them to step up to the microphone if they would, please, so I can introduce them. They're really terrific people, and I hope we all get a chance to appreciate what they're doing here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew, and this is my wife, Helen.
And when we had the project rebid, post-COVID, it came in at $128,000, which was nearly double what we had. Derek did a terrific job working with contractors, got the lowest possible bid, took his measurements, and they came out to be a little bit less than what had been previously estimated. So we came up with a project that needed somewhere around $88,000 by the time we were done, after Derek had remeasured and looked at the lowest bidder. That still left us approximately $43,000 short. And I received a phone call from Detective Eric Vasquez February 8th of 2022. And Eric Vasquez was the officer that was involved in responding and processing and doing all of the follow-up, and I think it's fair to say Christian work with both Andrew and Helen. He calls me up on February 8th and said, Carl, are you still on open space, greenways, bicycle pedestrian? And I said, yes. He said, I have a couple here that have done a GoFundMe project. Their 12-year-old daughter had passed away, and they decided to fund a project in her memory. Can you visit with them, meet with them, and spend some time showing them what the options are? And I simply found two really, really cool people. They shared things such as videos, a video that was played during the funeral, and as well as a video of their daughter, Addie, riding a bicycle. And it was very heartwarming, it was touching, and I think everybody who's been a parent out there or has ever suffered the loss looked at something like that and said, wow. They asked what they could do. I showed them various options, spent a good portion of the afternoon, and then we got to the point where they said, all right, we have $31,000 that we want to donate. Got it through the GoFundMe plan, and we would like to have this done in honor of our daughter. And We made arrangements with the township, with Ann, so that the money would be transferred. They were very generous with their contribution, and that money took us up to $76,000. And we have found additional monies in an engineering fund that's been used previously to bridge the gap between the roughly 88,000 to where we were with the Ralph Wilson and with Addie's GoFundMe. So with all that being said, I want to introduce two really, really great people with a big heart, Dr. Helen and Andrew, and I'd like them, if they feel comfortable, say a few words to the community. But most of all, thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, Adrienne really loved riding bikes on this island. She did it every day. And we just want to improve the bike. And we appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to be clear, while we were involved in moving the money, I think it's fair to say there's a lot of people on this island that knew Adrienne and that were friends with her and that rode bikes with her and went to school with her. And the money was always raised in an effort to support the trails on Grosse Ile, as that was one of the things that attracted us to this island. A lot of the people that were sitting here earlier tonight that have now left because these kind of things tend to drone on, really were responsible for donating a lot of this money. It wasn't really our family, although we helped facilitate it.
It was a community donation.
We just appreciate everybody coming together to help honor our daughter and honor the residents of this island. I think this trail is going to be a great step forward in that regard. Thank you.
I also understand that, Doctor, you have your sister here as well? Did not mean to slight her.
She's not a blood sister, but she was like an aunt to Adrienne, and we always refer to her that way, so it's the same effect.
Yeah. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Jameson, that you want to add to that? I think it's pretty clear.
No, I'm just grateful for for your family facilitating this, and I think it's a super awesome thing for your daughter. My daughter was actually friends with her, Sophia, and they went to school together. So I think it's a really great thing. I'm excited for it. Can't wait to go ride on the new trail. So thank you.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. With nothing else to be said, we have a motion that the Grosse Ile Township Board hereby authorize a contract totaling $97,700 to low bidder Veterans Fence for the installation of 2,400 feet of fencing along the eastern property line of the Grosse Ile Municipal Airport. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that passes 7-0. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to the fans. Thank you so much. And thank you, Board, for letting us move that up.
Thank you very much.
All right. So, number 2, and we're going to go back to action item number 2 on our list.
Number 3?
Well, yeah, I guess we do have to renumber them, don't we? So that's 2.
Brian can handle that. That's he's got it.
He's on top of this stuff. He should be, since he's involved. All right, David, you want to
Okay.
take that motion?
Excuse me. The Grosse Ile Township Board hereby authorizes adjustments to non-union employees' wages for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 in accordance with the proposed non-union wage adjustment chart dated April 3, 2023. This excuse me. This authorization includes a 2.5% cost of living adjustment for all non-union employees, as well as market adjustments for the chief of police, the deputy chief, the lieutenant, and this is the police administrative secretary, and the deputy clerk.
Support?
Support.
David, do you want to give the history? Or
No, I'll let Derek.
Derek come up and handle that?
Yeah, so as the memo indicates, there are wage adjustments for non-union employees of 2.5%, which the information included within the package shows is actually below what the average salary adjustments for municipalities within the state of Michigan, as determined by MML through their survey, shows as the range. So it's actually below that. The non-union employees have not had wage adjustments over the past 2 years. Certain non-union employees did receive bonuses in the amount of $1,000 last fiscal year, but an adjustment to their base wage hasn't been realized over the past 24 months. So this is the first in a decent amount of time. The adjustments to the police chief, the deputy chief, the lieutenant, police administrative secretary, and deputy clerk, those justifications were included in the memo that was part of your packet. They're based upon market, comparable communities, which those numbers were provided in the memo and were part of the budget conversation that we had, and eventually the approved budget that was presented and approved by the board over the past month or so. I know that there was a question earlier with regards to pension. For the 2.5% adjustment, generally MERS calculates 3% plus for pension wage adjustments. So that's what they're factoring in annually for their calculations. Anything below that 3% would end up resulting in obviously a reduction in the projected costs that they had established. So if we're not realizing that 3%, obviously that liability would end up being reduced based upon that assumption. That isn't being realized. Obviously that's not the case for market adjustments, but I think as you will see through the wages being proposed for the deputy chief, the chief, and other positions, lieutenant within the department, those costs for those personnel are generally lower than what you see for your patrol officers. So at least at the tail end of their career, I think the top 7 or 8 wage earners, not by name but by numerical order, were provided in that memo. So actually the pension costs, unless they had a higher FAC previous in their career, for our admin positions are actually a bit less than what they would be if they were overtime eligible and part of the rank and file. So just worth noting to address some of those concerns if those existed. With that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Well, I don't have any questions. Coming in, this board coming in, I will say right up front that I don't like the way we do adjustments for our non-union employees. We really don't have a plan. This is the type of thing that we do. I don't think it's good. Greg pointed out there's a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration that when you do this, it doesn't take it into consideration. The one reason I am in favor of this tonight is this is the first time in 3 years that these people are getting an adjustment to their base pay. They have, our first 2 years, they did not get any adjustment. I was hoping during that time that we would be able to sit down and actually not only look at non-union, but our union. I truly believe that this community, which is based on residents paying the tab, benefits and compensation can only go so, can only be so much. Where we're spending more and more in benefits and compensation, which means we're spending less and less available money for the community as far as being able to do things for the community. And we have to balance a reasonable wage for our people against what we can afford. We are not Woodhaven. We are not Brownstown. We are not We are not anybody out there that we look at and say, well, they're paying their guy this. That's not a good way to do it. We have to come up with a much better, more analytical way for Grosse Ile. We haven't been able to come up with that formula or that process right now. And at the same token as wanting to do that and being good for us to do it, and hopefully in the near future we will come up with something on that. You also cannot penalize your employees because you haven't done what needs to be done. So I think this is a fair adjustment as far as the cost of living. And one thing that you run into, especially in small departments, which is what Grosse Ile has everywhere, not just in police. There's a small fire department, small DPS is small. Every place we look, we're small. You have a manager, and you have employees, and you constantly were looking at the employees making as much or more than the bosses, and the managers who have a little bit more on their plate. The decisions are on their plate. They're the ones that get the backlash. So we have to come up with something to make it fair. And not only that, but so that people can look ahead and know what's coming for them instead of, well, what's going to happen this year? Are we going to get something? Aren't we going to get something? If we get something, what it's going to be? We need to come up with something, and it can be done like everything else. It takes time. It's not something you're going to do in a week. It's not something that you just pick up a list and say, oh, well, we go through this and we'll take an average and we'll give them that. It's not that simple. It takes time, and finding the time to do that, finding the proper people to be on the subcommittee to do that is something that needs to be addressed. I've been saying that to the various boards that I've been on for a long time. Just haven't had anybody to listen. But it's something that we're still looking at, and even though we're going with this year, it's not to say that we're going to stop and say, well, it's over. It isn't. We're still going to try and fit that into our schedule with everything else that we're doing. So but I do think these numbers are fair. Uda.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. All that being said, and I agree that we do need to be able to justify any changes that we make on a realistic and sustainable effort. But I also want to point out something that our finance director and Darsnick has pointed out many times, is that we do not do widgets. We are people. We are a service organization. We are your local government that provide services, and in most cases, those services are provided by people for people. And we're talking about our police, our chiefs, our department heads here. While I don't always agree that we should compare ourselves to other communities, we do need to be competitive to continue to draw talented and reliable, intelligent, well-educated, people to work in our community. And so a lot of times the money we get from the state and so forth, we're not here to provide a lot of, extras or luxuries. We're here to provide the basic public services. The township clerk, the township treasurer, the township supervisor. We are the smallest form of government, well, let alone the village. But so we provide things here at a much higher level than most townships in the state do, and that's because our residents expect that. They demand that, and they are willing to support a lot of that with millages. Our police and fire department are examples of that. Other departments have user fees, but the clerk's office doesn't have user fees. We are an overhead department. We don't really generate a lot of revenue, though we do passport acceptance. We do little bits and pieces where we can, but basically the service we provide is people and their organization skills and their efficacy, their reliability. And so I am in support of this also, but for much of the same reasons as Jim, but also because people are very important to our organization, and we have to show on some level that their services are valuable, not just to us as a board, but to us as a community.
Thank you, Uda. Yeah, Joe.
I'm sorry, Dave.
No, I'm good.
He was sitting back, so you could, so I could say.
Okay.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments. What I looked at in this issue, and again, and I don't mean to always bring this up, but having lived it being a police chief myself, I understand that Grosse Ile has to pay on that balance, and the balance is what we can afford and what is fair and just. And when I looked at this side, I know that Doug and the rest, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Doug was getting for a year and 7 months sergeant's pay for doing a chief's job. Now, I'm not going to get into, I realize he was asked and they all turned it down, but nevertheless, he still was getting sergeant's pay for a year and 7 months. And when I look at where others are, it doesn't really change my mind. I don't care if the chief in Trenton makes 150 grand. It doesn't mean we should be making 120. So I fully get that, and you have to be fiscally responsible. When I look at other ends of this, and I'm not sure if the people know this, but is this a personal issue? I guess it is, but it's public information. Doug's retirement is much different than mine. And he got hit on the backside when we did the union contract. And the union contract, now the management mirrors. What that means is we get the same, when I say we, I'm talking about police management, get the same as the individuals in the union. And after negotiating that contract, some things were removed from management. And then you have an issue, they probably don't know that, our lieutenant, Todd Brozek, is put on 12-hour shifts. I personally, this is the truth, I didn't even know that he doesn't get paid for that extra time. He just has to work the 12-hour shifts and get paid for the 8. Because that was the agreement, apparently. I didn't even know that. So I'm just saying, I think I can go and show you why I believe that this one's justified. I do agree with Jim. I know it's sometimes hard to believe, Jim, that I'm actually agreeing with you. But we do need a high and a low for each management position. And when you reach that high, you reach that high. And that's what management is about. And we go from there if there's changes, but there's still a high and a low. And that is going to take some time, Jim. I fully agree with that, but I wish we could maybe start on that somehow and get some things going. And I used this word earlier, and I don't mean to be so redundant, but I don't want to punish the chief, the deputy chief, and the lieutenant for becoming management. I just don't feel that that's correct. I've been there. I know what that's like for not getting a market adjustment in the 10 years I was a chief, but we went through some terrible times. I get that. My love for the game kept me here, and I was fine. But I don't like seeing people punished because they move up in the world. So anyway, I'll be voting yes for it, and that's just some of my reasons for it.
Yeah,
Good. Thank you.
I think that, and I know we talked about this before, Jim. It was one of the few things I think you and I really jived on was a tiered stepped and capped system that could be applicable across departments. Because it is kind of a shame to look at the numbers and see a department head making less than people in their department, right? That doesn't encourage good employees to become department heads. That encourages good employees employees to just stay right where they are. So I support this too. I think we got to pay people fair wages, and we want to encourage retention of the high quality employees we have. But I do think we need to get after the project of restructuring our pay for the future.
Thank you, Jameson.
I agree with what Jameson and Joe said. We ask a lot of our department heads, and probably more than the title would indicate in some other community. There are, in some ways, I think our staff employees are fair and equitable, and in the range of other communities. I think in some ways, our department managers are lacking. They are not lacking. The compensation needs to be looked at and adjusted. They've gone through the last 2 years without a pay adjustment to their salaries.
Their base pay.
Their base pay, to their yes. And I think this is called for. It's equitable, and I have no problems with it.
All right. Thanks, David. Not seeing any other questions on it. We have a motion that the Grosse Ile Township Board hereby authorize adjustments to non-union employees' wages for the fiscal year 2023-2024 in accordance with the proposed non-union wage adjustment chart dated April 3rd, 2023. The authorization includes a 2.5 cost of living adjustment for all non-union employees, as well as a market adjustment for Chief of Police, Deputy Chief, Lieutenant, Administrative Secretary, which is the Police Administrative Secretary, and the Deputy Clerk. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Just a quick note, with the Deputy Clerk, his market adjustment is not only because he deserves it, but he is going to be taking on additional duties. And that brings us to a meeting we couldn't have without a DPS issue. David, if you would.
Thank you. Pending a recommendation from the Grosse Ile Department of Public Services Commission, and based upon a recommendation from the Grosse Ile Township Engineers, the Grosse Ile Township Board hereby authorizes a change order to the township's contract with Sorensen Gross Company to include additional work, which includes the rebuild of primary clarifier number 1 at the Grosse Ile wastewater treatment plant at a cost of $260,000.
Support.
Okay.
You were Derek going to give us a background on this.
Well, I'll take it until I screw it up, Derek. How's that? The equipment for the repair or the rebuild of primary clarifier 1, that was determined a long time ago. We split the installation, the needed equipment and the installation into 2 parts. The equipment's been purchased, put it out for bid. Veolia was the low bidder, and that's the company that actually runs the treatment plant for us. They were the low bidder for that, but we were unable to come to terms in a contract under insurance limits and liability. So then the township engineers, C. Raines Company, suggested to review the scope of this project with the contractors that received the work under the ACO at the wastewater treatment plant. And that primary contractor was Sorensen Gross. Weiss, the other bidder, was also asked, because they're performing work at the plant. They were both asked to submit a proposal to do the primary clarifier install and rebuild and install, and their contracts or their bids came in at $292,500 for Weiss and $260,000 for Sorensen Gross, and that resulted in this recommendation to award the project to Sorensen Gross. You'll notice it in the recommendation in the motion. It's pending the recommendation from the Public Services Commission, and we are meeting tomorrow evening. We didn't have a meeting last month, but I am 100%. I'm confident that the commission will second this recommendation.
They're aware of this.
They're aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're aware of it. We just didn't have the meeting, and it's tomorrow night. But we wanted to get this work started at the plant, so.
Is there a timing issue where we can't approve this next meeting?
Yeah, the operator's working at the plant right now. The equipment's been sitting at the plant for about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So it's important to get it moving, especially because there's windows for when we can take this primary clarifier down and still maintain the operation and the rest of the plant, and this is a good time to do it, so.
What was Veolia's? They were low bidder. What were
$88,000, something like that.
Oh, they were. But it was the insurance that.
Yeah, there were some issues with their willingness to accept liability beyond the cost of the
Amount
contract.
of the contract. Right.
So the township obviously had an issue with that, because if there was an issue when the installation occurred, the liability could far exceed that cost of that contract. So so that was the long and short of the issue. Just for the benefit of the board and the residents, our primary clarifier is obviously, as the name would indicate, is our first clarifier. We have 4 of them at the plant. They're subterranean, so they're down below, I believe, probably 3 levels. They're basically big concrete tanks, like a huge swimming pool, and it has a conveyor system that runs through the tank and pulls material, sludge, and solids from that settling tank. What this involves is draining that tank down, cleaning that tank, and then replacing that whole conveyor system that's existing in the tank. So it has to be non-operational while they do the work. So there's motors, conveyors, tracks that all have to be replaced. All that equipment is right at the plant right now. We already had that delivered some 6 months ago, as I mentioned. So this is the installation and then the fire up of that new clarifier equipment and make sure that it's operating properly. So that's the long and short of the tank.
Other questions?
One other item worth noting, there was a secondary bid on that first time that we bid it, and it was north of $200,000. I think it was like 230, 240, something like that. So Veolia was kind of the outlier.
Which and if you read, and I went back and read the various bids, and the wording even in their thing showed that they were not in line with everybody else as far as the insurance. And I do know that Derek and the commission worked hard on that with them, and they just I won't say it was like no liability versus everybody with liability, but it was pretty darn close.
And we didn't feel in good conscience that we could bring that to the board to award it with those potential risks out there.
Very, very limited coverage on their side. All right, other questions, comments? None? We have a motion. Pending the recommendation of the Public Service Commission and based upon a recommendation of the Grosse Ile Township engineers, the Grosse Ile Township Board hereby authorizes a change order to the township's contract with Sorensen Gross Company to include additional work, which includes the rebuild of primary clarifier number 1 at the Grosse Ile wastewater treatment plant at a cost of $260,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Sorensen Gross can go ahead and we can get that done. Have we had other clarifiers done already?
Yes, the other 3 have been
That's
completed. Yep.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily do 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order. And if you haven't seen that operation, gentlemen, I suggest you go down and take a look at it. It's quite something. Carl, if you go, please don't bring your swimsuit. You don't want to do that.
I feel like we've improved the
The reference to an indoor pool was.
Yeah, I know,
entertaining.
I see your eyes light up. All right, I believe
One more.
that brings us to, action item number 5, special land use, dog daycare boarding facility. Kyle, take it away.
I'd like to make a motion to approve special land use recommendation by the Planning Commission.
Support?
Second.
The history and purpose on this is the Planning Commission held a public hearing on April 3rd, 2023, and it was approved unanimously by the commission. There was one resident in the public who had concerns that were addressed by the applicant and commission. That's what's in the agenda item report, but I'm very happy that Paul and Sue Delpiez stuck around for this whole meeting. This is the reason that this is moving forward today. Their proposal is in our agenda, but do you two want to maybe come up and speak a little bit about what you're planning to do, or? Sorry.
No. We have no planned presentation, but I'm very happy to take questions. I'm Paul and Susan Delpiez, residents of Grosse Ile, so.
I would just say, I would just say thank you. Genius. Like I drive to Taylor by the airport to bring my dog to a reputable facility. I'm sure plenty of other residents do too. So I saw this and I was like, heck yeah. So
Very good idea. Looking at your plans, it looks very nice.
Thanks, Susan,
and
for
I
that.
just, if we vote in favor of it tonight, I wish you well.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Well, it sounds like they're being modest tonight, but I did want to just, I mean, they're what they're planning to put in there is something called Island Paradise, which is a dog daycare kennel service, which sorely needed on the island. I've heard from a lot of people. Myself might be taking advantage of it. I know that they've been in a long process to try to get this approved, so I'm grateful to have them here tonight. I've learned on the Planning Commission one of the few things I can do is get things on the agenda shortly after it's approved. So I'm grateful to the board that they did that in this case to allow them to move forward with what they need to do. Just very excited that you all have done this. Grateful. I mean, these are two amazing people that serve our community in many different ways. Hope it's okay to say Mrs. Delpiez is one of our police officers here. And so just grateful that they're doing this. I know they'll do it well. And hopeful that the board will support it.
We will not be taking you off the road.
You weren't allowed to say that.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about something like this, looking at the packet board, you can see what the building looks like now, what it's going to look like when they get through with it. I mean, that alone is a big plus for us. But certainly, we certainly have a lot of people with dogs on the island, and we've had dogs forever. And yes, we in the past have had to go over to AAA or other places when we go out of town to take them, and this certainly would be something that you would we would jump at. So good luck with it, and thank you for bringing the idea to us. Any questions on this? There's no swimming at this one if you go see it. All right, we have a motion to approve special land use recommendation by the Planning Commission for the dog daycare boarding facility. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now I can officially thank you and welcome you to that.
Arfs?
Good luck with your project. All right. That brings us to public comment. Any public comment, 3 minutes on any topic? What happened to all our people?
Chief Carmack's still out there.
Interesting that we moved.
No, Doug, it's not for small children.
Kevin, good evening.
Good evening, Kevin Flavin, Park Lane. I wanted to address some of the issues with the tower sale, or suggested or lease, whatever you want to call it. Mr. Forrester mentioned that actually a number of different issues. And the supervisor and other members of the board suggest that people call them and come to them with any questions they have about an issue. So members of the Grosse Ile Taxpayer Association came to I believe to see you, Mr. Budney, and Mr. Thiel. And my question is, there were questions asked and financials presented. It doesn't, I don't know that those questions were ever answered. I don't know that Mr. Forrester ever talked about what financial analysis of what the value, how the towers have increased in value, appreciated in value over the last 13 years. And I think it comes out to somewhere around 20% annually, a capital appreciation plus what income they create. And I made a phone call to a gentleman who's considered an expert in the field, John Pestle with Varnum Law Group, and he also had a seminar with the International Municipal Lawyers Association, and he does this all the time. I don't know why we can't get an expert who does these kind of sales and leases to talk to us about this. At his webinar, he suggested that Mr. Pestle said, keep your cell towers, they will continue to appreciate in value. 5G is not a big deal as far as what will happen with towers. Over the next 10 years, towers should continue to appreciate in value. And attorneys who sound doom and gloom are trying to scare folks into selling. I just think that there's a public hearing should be held on selling one of the largest assets in the community, in the township. What are the investment options? You did discuss that and said you would come back with a report on that. And I would like to see a financial analysis on what actually is really happening there. The other question is, Mr. Forrester complains about not being paid very much, and he is going to receive a big, a large amount of money for selling these towers. So his compensation, it seems like a little bit of a conflict of interest if he is being compensated for selling the towers rather than providing expert information to the community and to the board on what they should do. I think it is a mistake that we don't have better information on that. The other thing was, we talked about a plan on, I did not see as part of the budget any capital improvement planning separated from the budget itself that had a narrative with it saying this building needs X amount of repairs, or the township needs a new roof on this building. Didn't see any of that, didn't see any information on how the airport facilities, all those buildings, what repairs need to be done. I hope that as the budgeting process continues throughout the year, that there will be a capital improvement plan put together so that we and the public knows what we are going to need to spend. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Greg Karmazin. I wanted to comment again on a few things that happened during the meeting and one in the study session. On the wage adjustments, I agree with Supervisor Budney. I would like to see a better process here for deciding those. I think that Trustee Yeager and Trustee Porcelli raised some very good points about having salary bands, highs and lows, and those types of things. I'd like to know more about the MERS calculation, but if in fact it's included in there, budgeted, that's good information I didn't have. So I appreciate that being disclosed and discussed. On the cell tower, I would like to go back to this chart that was presented during the meeting. You can't really see the whole thing, but I'd like to point out that this chart was created, as I understand it, in 2009-2010 fiscal year, and it's somewhat ironic that it's being used now to justify a sale of the cell towers, because in fact what this analysis shows is if you look at the very end of it, it shows right here, and it's impossible, of course this isn't, the materials that you have are basically unreadable, but if we could clarify it, it would show you that it was actually determined that it was in the financial best interest of the township to own the towers and lease them versus sell them in the 2009-2010 fiscal year. So I think that's kind of interesting that that's being presented as a justification for selling them now. I will say that Bob Zelasko and I went through this very carefully, and we put together some financial analysis, which I can't go through now because I don't have enough time, but I'd just like to point out that what we concluded is that the total return, annual return on owning and leasing is about 10.5% better than selling and investing in mirrors. And in the with this certain analysis and assumptions, that could translate to more than $1 million of benefits. So I think we got to be very careful when we're making financial decisions to have apples to apples comparison and forward-looking financial analysis, which unfortunately wasn't presented tonight. So I'd like to see the board have that kind of analysis created so you can see side by side, here's what we project for cash flow if we own and lease versus invest in mirrors. Moving on to
that was just one of the things we were looking at. I mean, that's there's no decision has been made what we're going to do. That's the whole purpose of this whole thing.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Budney. I'm just pointing out that if you're going to properly analyze this from a financial standpoint, you need to have a pro forma going forward to analyze the current leasing scenarios with the assumptions disclosed, and then the investment in mirrors with the assumptions disclosed, and then look at the bottom line. I think you're going to see that the capital appreciation plus the leasing of owning and leasing is higher to the township than if you invest in mirrors. But that's based on the past experience, and I have read some market analysis that shows, as Mr. Flavin had mentioned, that this industry is in a growth period, and there are experts that are advising municipalities not to sell because of that. Moving on to the Centennial Farm.
30 seconds, please.
Okay, well, just to say, I think that the Lutons are doing a fantastic job. The Centennial Farm is an excellent asset. Equestrian should be a part of it, but I will repeat my earlier issues that the reason that I was concerned about this lease is it still doesn't identify what the township costs are for operating and maintaining. And I know Trustee Bletcher talked about a 5-year plan, and I think Trustee Porcelli talked about a capital improvements plan. I know Trustee DeBosi has talked about that numerous times about need for capital improvement plan, concern that money could be taken away from other rec programs. So I'm just saying you've got to get that under control. You've got to get that information developed so we can have a robust program equestrian program at Centennial Farm with all the other things that the community wants, but then it's budgeted and we understand what our costs are. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Did I see Jade's hand up? No, I did not. Okay. I thought I didn't, but I just yeah. Bob, do you
Bob Z. Blauvelt. I support what Greg said, and as you know, I was involved. We did work some numbers out. You need to take a hard look with a pro forma or whatever you're going to do. It's the biggest asset that we have. The numbers that we have looked at show that it's not justifiable to sell the towers. It was more beneficial to keep them. So please take a hard look at that. Relative to Mr. Porcerelli's comments, and I think a couple hours, on handing out raises, we have to be fiscally responsible. We really don't have a program in place, Jim, as you stated. We have no cap. So, God bless them. I'd give them $1 million if I had it, but we only have so much money. We need to be fiscally responsible and put together a pay scale and have a upper limit so that we at least have some control over this. On the cell towers, I heard about the agreement that stated that we sort of made a commitment in the millage vote that we will have an equestrian farm. That's fine. If you put verbiage out there like that telling me you were going to put a new Cadillac in my driveway tomorrow morning, I'd vote for it. But if you told me I had to pay for it, I'd say no. You just approved a 5-year contract without a 5-year plan. No estimated cost. You don't know what you're looking at down the road on this property, but you picked up the responsibility for it. By doing this, you may have made a financial commitment that just put the Grosse Ile taxpayers in harm's way, as Mr. Yeager had stated. And listening to the speeches up here, Mr. Bletcher gave 5 good reasons not to vote for it, but then turned around and voted for it anyway. I was hoping we would see something come out of that, but we didn't. The percentage of Grosse Ile residents using this facility, if it is 300, you're talking less than 3%. So I'd like to compliment the 2 fellows that actually stood up and stated that we shouldn't vote on this tonight, Mr. Kyle DeBoussier and Jameson Yeager. In the eyes of 50 people staring at them out here, they at least held to their standards and values, and in my opinion, made the right decision. To the other 5 who voted for it, I say to you, you may have rewarded the minority and penalized the majority with the expense. And that's not what we put you up there for. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. There is nobody over there, right? We're empty. Anyone else? Okay. With that, Ms. Clerk, our reports.
We'll wait for Bob to leave because he doesn't want to hear it. We have a fire commission meeting coming up, we hope this Thursday, April 13th at 6 p.m. We expect to have a quorum. So that takes place in this room. The CRC, the Community Recreation Commission, met here last week, and we are currently pursuing the planning for operations and maintenance at Centennial Farm as we continue to move forward. We continue to discuss and plan for future operations and maintenance funding through multiple sources and resources. And the public is more than welcome to attend these sessions. They're open to the public here. And our, of course, mandate to the community, again, voted by the residents to tax themselves to create a small recreation department, is to provide various public recreational services that make it possible for all residents to enjoy, not just those who can afford private services and private clubs. The Community Recreation Department did have some bad news that went out over public media, social media just this evening, and that is that Grosse Ile Rec will not be running a youth summer day camp this season because we simply couldn't find and hire enough staff to make it happen. So there will be no youth summer camp on Grosse Ile this season through the Recreation Department. Island Fest, another activity that Grosse Ile doesn't have to have, but the residents tend to enjoy, is scheduled for June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. It is supported by sponsorships, and we are always looking for sponsors. We also have exhibitions, exhibitors. We have food trucks, parade applications if you want to take part in the parade. We are always looking for volunteers, and all of that you can find on GrosseIleIslandFest.com. You can go there for application PDFs and news. There is also planned right now a soccer tournament and a lacrosse tournament to take place on various fields over here at the Airport Commerce Park and the high school and middle school. So it's a big event for the community. I think we have made arrangements for Skirbeck Family Carnival to return. Chairman Chad Novak had pointed out that there are apparently 2 new scary rides coming to the carnival. I think the word vomit came up in the conversation. The band Howlin' Mercy, Detour Band. There will be all kinds of activities, including, of course, the beverage tent. And it's a event at which a lot of our other local groups raise funds for their rest of the year. So, this is just a really exciting community event for everyone to get involved with. So that's my report today. I don't think there's anything from the clerk's office because we don't have any imminent elections, though if you need a passport or want to, just come in and see what elections are about, stop in and say hi to Brian and Elena.
I'll be in tomorrow.
So that's it.
Thank you, Uda. David?
Thank you. All 2022 property tax bills that were unpaid as of March 1 of 23 will now be collected directly by Wayne County, and they'll be sending out delinquent tax letters in early June for those property owners who may still owe their 2022 property taxes. The investment report for the year end of March 31st was still being prepared, so I don't have the investment results tonight. And Treasurer's Office continues to sell 2022 dog tags at a cost of $12, as well as passes for the dog park for an additional $10. The DPS Commission meets tomorrow evening. Among the items to be discussed tomorrow, one is the primary clarifier issue, which the board graciously approved pending that recommendation, and review of the road bids on the road projects that resulted from the millage that was passed last fall. And that meeting is tomorrow evening, 4/11, at 7 o'clock in this room. The Airport Commerce Park Commission, our next meeting is April 17th, and they will be discussing As of today, we have a potential new tenant for one of our buildings, and that is on our agenda for next Monday, or April 17th, our next meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Trustees reports. Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Again, I have the pleasure of sitting on the Greenways Open Space Committee, but I want to start out again by thanking Andrew and Helen for their very generous GoFundMe, made under very difficult circumstances, and I think that is a very tremendous gift, and I'm really am appreciative of what they've done. The Greenways Open Space meets on the first Tuesday of the month in this room, 7 p.m. We have Dump the Junk again planned for Saturday, May 6th from 9 to 4 at the DPS yard, which is just a little bit west of Alpaca Farms and a little bit east of the Grosse Ile Health Center and Fitness Center. We also have a Greenways Open Space annual report that has listed accomplishments, including the final remediation of the Meridian Woods drain to alleviate flooding in adjacent neighborhoods, including Manchester. We have virtually completed all of the stages in preparation of the Ferry Trail between Gage and Ferry Road, and expect to have a ribbon cutting in May. The Open Space Committee was advised that the Township had approved the sale. We're all very grateful for that and look forward to having a walkthrough on April 13th for various properties that we hope to be able to include trails that will allow access to the water. And also want to have a personal thank you to Chief Porcerelli, or to Chief Carmack, former Chief Porcerelli, for an excellent study session that they did regarding a centralized dispatch. I had the privilege of attending that last Thursday night in the Public Safety Building, and Joe, I thank you and the entire commission and the entire department, seemed like most people were there, did a terrific job of laying out the positives and the negatives, and I just want to say thank you. And that was just a great presentation and a great study. That concludes my report.
You sure?
I think that's enough for now.
Hey, thanks, Carl. We'll see you next. Kyle.
Sure. I sit on the Planning Commission, which meets as needed on the first or third Mondays of the month. They met last Monday, April 3rd, when I wasn't able to attend. As you all know, they unanimously approved the Island Paradise special use recommendation, and I'm happy that we approved that tonight. I forgot to mention, I felt like Sue and Paul Delpiez did a really good job at responding to a resident that was had some concerns, and I know that they've kind of responded to concerns throughout this whole process in a really good way. So I'm grateful that they did that, and I know that they'll continue to be open to that as they move forward with this. But just so that the board knows, I don't just push these things through. There was also a lot split that was unanimously approved at the last meeting, so that you'll see that coming forward pretty soon. And then there was another one that was proposed but tabled and I think the Planning Commission will meet soon to discuss that. But yeah, that's the Planning Commission business. Centennial Farm, I think when I was appointed to this position and asked for people to, give me feedback, I got very little response. And I think someone told me was, wait until you do something wrong and then you'll get a lot of feedback. So I think we saw some of that tonight, and I don't feel bad about it, actually, in a lot of different ways. The people that have commented towards me have been very respectful, very kind, put their positions out there in a good way. And it was really good to see that energy not translated just on social media, but here in the meeting room tonight. And I meant what I said, like, I care about that farm, and I hope that energy is translated into a long-term plan for maintaining that. It's one of our few public spaces that we have like it, and hopeful that this is the beginning, or not beginning. This is something that's been going on for a long time, and it was a lot of work was done to make it happen, and I think a lot of work is going to be needed to keep it going. And so yeah, I'll end with that tonight. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Kyle. Along those lines, it's never wrong to have people disagree with you. It just isn't. You know, you did it right and you did it wrong. It's not correct. You think one way, the other person thinks another way. That's the way it's supposed to be. Quite truthfully, that's how you learn things. If everybody agrees all the time, I guarantee you're not learning a lot. So, no, I mean, and some go with, you know, sometimes you're on the winning side of the boat, and sometimes you're not. Nothing wrong with that. So, I was very appreciative of our discussion. That's the way those things are supposed to be handled. Joe, you were up next.
Good evening. I sit on the Police Commission. Our meetings are the third Tuesday of each month in this room at 7 p.m. And as Carl stated, and thank you, Carl, those were very kind words from what you saw at the meeting that night. And it was really one of the larger meetings, as he stated, that I've seen in a long time. And the bottom line is we talked about the dispatch consolidation, and I did a little presentation of the numbers. I will give those numbers to the Township Board when we vote on it. And again, the bottom line is the police commissioners were in favor of not going with consolidation. And we had a really good discussion from the audience, good discussion from the commission. And we should be voting on that, Jim, sooner or later? What is your plan? Does that come up for a vote?
Well, yeah, and I was going to mention it, but I'll mention it now. I sent the board an email today. Of course, the discussion was on Wednesday, and you had yours on Thursday. Your meeting on Thursday. Like anytime you get information, you need time to think about it, come up with questions. We want to much like what we were talking about with the cell tower, guys. You've heard it. I think for those of us who weren't there, we watched the video of it, so we pretty much all should be knowing what was presented. Come up with your questions. Get us your. I had said get us your questions so that we can get answers, because before we make any decision, and there are a lot of questions out there, so I'm not sure how the commission was able to come up with a consensus. I'm sure you didn't vote on it. It was a consensus.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry if I
but we need to have all the answers to all the questions. One of the questions that isn't answered yet is how would we handle things differently? And we have to know, first of all, can we handle them differently? And if we can, how would that be? Is it worth doing? Those things have to be answered before any decisions are made. So the quicker everybody on the board can get their questions answered, the quicker we will bring this up for a vote. I just want to make sure everybody has their answers, have answers to their questions before we do that. That's all. So if you're set, you're ready to vote, let me know that you're ready to vote, and we'll put it on an agenda.
Jim, would this be helpful then? If maybe we had a study session to follow up. Doug and I have met. He has showed me how he would handle the lobby, how he would handle the other issues. I put the numbers together. We've agreed on where we're at with our numbers. We've agreed on what we need for the lobby and what Grosse Ile would expect. Would you like, how would you like that information given?
That's interesting too, because we've been dealing with Doug, and he's supposed to be bringing us information. That would be a way to do it, to get it to everybody at one time instead of 7 different calls. We can do something with that. I'll talk to Doug about that. We can get that done. First of all, everybody's got to know what their questions are, and go to the right source to get the answer. Whether that's going back to Chief Watson or Bob Heck, or whether it's going to Doug. But we got to make sure everybody's got their questions answered. That's when we're going to be ready to vote on it. So, yeah, we're working on that. We're going through that right now. We have been working on that with what ifs and everything. So that's good to know, and we'll be talking about that. Anything else?
Oh, no,
Joe?
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Well, if you're good, then Jameson,
All right.
leave it to you.
Good evening. I sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals, which currently does not have a scheduled appeal, but if we did, would be on the fourth Tuesday of this month. I also sit on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Action Committee. And they meet on the third Thursday of the month. So I'm just going to double back on the things we got done today. I'm excited for the Gibraltar Bay Connector. I don't think it would have been possible without the Byers family and their very selfless efforts to make that happen. So again, thank you to them. I'm super excited about Paradise. I like saying Paradise. I think it's going to be.
That's what I think you're really excited about. It's there and you can say it.
And then, listening to Kevin and Greg and Bob's remarks about the cell towers and whatnot, I think we're insightful. And I know people are like, well, it's the same four folks every meeting, but they're also kind of the watchdogs, right? Like CNN's not coming here, C-SPAN doesn't care, but these 4 or 5 people are here watching us and reporting it back to the community. So thanks for being here. And I think what Kevin said about the cell towers makes perfect sense, because I don't think smart companies buy depreciating assets, 10 or 15 years before they drop to zero value. They buy assets that are going to appreciate. And then finally, I want to get with you, Chief Carmack. I'd like to just understand the license plate reader. Can you help me out with that? Okay, so that's all I got.
Had he moved that to your street?
No. Well, I've been pinged a few times, but no. I just want to understand. So I know we're talking about potentially going with Central Dispatch. I know I did emergency services outside of Wayne County where we did have a Central, and I really liked Central. So I'd like to see the license plate reader and talk to you a little bit about it to see, what some of the limitations are for Grosse Ile as far as transitioning to a program like that. So I'll set up a meeting with you. Cool. That's all I got. Thanks, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Trustee. Derek, if you would, if you have anything.
I just have a couple items this evening. First and foremost, I'm aware that there were a number of complaints, and there have been a number of complaints over the past couple of months about recyclables ending up in trash trucks. So I wanted to touch on that real quick. I did speak with Priority over the past couple of months on this issue because it has been reoccurring. And the answer I'm getting from them is that oftentimes recyclables end up in the trash truck if there's any sense of contamination of those recyclables in that container. So, and in addition to that, if there's anything that's outside of the container, let's say you put a cardboard box next to your recycle bin, that'll end up going in the trash truck as well. So they will not sort, they will not remove contaminated items that might be in your bin. They'll just trash the whole thing. So some of the issues that residents might be experiencing can be related to that. But then again, I also know that there are some residents that claim that there aren't any contaminated items in their bin and it still ends up in the trash container or the trash truck. So I just want residents to know, feel free to get a hold of us if you witness that. The trash hauler, they do have cameras on their trucks. So they can actually go back to when a load was picked up and review what occurred during that pickup. And then we can, touch base with the resident and provide to them an answer that Priority is able to provide to us. In addition to that, there is some information that I've asked Priority to put together with regards to contaminated items that don't belong in a recycle container, so that we can do a little bit of an outreach to the residents just to try to cut down on those issues that might be occurring that are, honestly, or honest anyways, honest disposal of recyclables. But also I understand that this is an instance that can occur by, them rushing or not taking the proper efforts to go ahead and do things right. And they've assured me that they're looking into that and trying to emphasize to their crews that if that is occurring, that's unacceptable. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any of those issues. The second item I wanted to address.
Say something?
Yes,
quick?
sure.
So, I mean, just so you all know, before this, when I was a Grosse Ile Now moderator, this was like the most common thing that came up for me. But I know I've talked to you about this, Derek. Can you just clarify one question that often comes up is cost? It's like, oh, they're doing this to make money off of us or something like that. What's your sense of, I think you kind of explained the cost to me. It doesn't seem to me that would be what they'd be doing, right?
They don't receive any kind of cost break, for taking trash to the landfill versus taking it to the recycle center. It wouldn't be an instance where they're getting rid of it for that reason. More than likely, if that's occurring, after talking to Priority, it could be a new driver, a new employee that just either doesn't know better or doesn't care. Or it could be they were rushing at the end of the day, and rather than circle that second truck around to go pick up the recyclables, they're just trying to get out of town and get rid of the items, get them off the island. So that could be the case too. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying that's what could happen in those instances. But it's not a matter of, a cost savings on their end. But I do also understand the frustration of the residents. I mean, if you're going to take the time to clean your recyclables, properly sort them, put them out to the curb, there's a lot of effort associated with that. I mean, you're doing it for a purpose. You're not having it, you're not doing that to have it end up in the landfill. So I understand the frustration. I think they understand the concern, and we'll work with the residents to try to get to the bottom of what's going on, and also try to educate to try to limit, those occurrences when it legitimately is treated as garbage for various reasons. So
I think the key is that the residents do have to get a hold of us and let us know it's happening.
Yeah, and like I said, they do have cameras on their trucks, and I've had them take a look at a couple of instances. I think I talked to you, Kyle, about that, where they can go back and look at the camera and see what exactly happened in that case. So, okay. So that's item number one. Item number two, I know there's been a lot of feedback about the chipping that's going on with the storm that we had. I appreciate everybody, all the residents' patience with the process. To be honest with you about what's going on, there's just a lot of material. We have something like over 4,000 homes, and I'd venture to say half of those residences have put material out to the curb. So that's created a tremendous workload for the contractor that we have bound a contract with at the township here for our tree removal and tree services. But I did want to give a bit of an update tonight as to kind of where we're at. The map that's on the overhead, the highlighted roads are all the areas that they have been so far, and this is as recent as today. There are really four locations that haven't been serviced, and that's indicated by the green dots in these locations of the island. So they'll be working on that this week, and then hopefully it will be completed by the end of this week. And I say hopefully, and what gives me optimism that it will is not too dissimilar to police mutual aid. We have something in DCC called like DPW mutual aid. So actually Trenton, I contacted them on Friday because they've helped me out in other communities during emergencies, and they have equipment and manpower that is available to us under the mutual aid agreement. And they actually were in town today starting at about 3 o'clock. So they're going to work with us to try to expedite the removal of the remainder of these items and get things cleared out of the community so that residents don't have to cut around these piles with their lawnmowers, and their fertilizing companies can get in. And Trenton is very efficient because they have some pretty massive equipment that they'll be in the neighborhoods with.
So today, just about 3 o'clock, they started going up Island Boulevard from East River.
Yep.
So that was the beginning of that green dot.
Yep.
So.
Yep. They're going to be working. Actually, Trenton's going to be working between Meridian and East River heading ferry north. So, and they have a chipping crew, and then they also have a truck with a grapple on it where they actually pick up the piles and put them in the back of the truck. The contractor that we have, what's been taking so long is that they're actually using a chip truck and hand loading everything into the chipper, and obviously that does take some time. And when you have material like this that you have to load into the back of a chipper, we have homes that have the whole frontage of their road or the whole frontage of their property that is all sticks. And that just takes time. I mean, you could spend a half hour at this one location just doing that work. So that is just what's been going on. I'm sure there's been plenty of questions that you've received as trustees that are associated with the work that's going on. But that's where we're at, where we're going, and kind of the reason why. So, and then the last item I have is just a real quick update. I took a moment to go out to the Meridian Road Bridge this afternoon, and they are making good progress. So this is at the bridge itself. The span has been removed. They still have the abutments that have to be removed, but they are making good progress with their demo. This bridge was probably one of the strongest bridges in the entire state. I did speak with the contractor that's doing the work, and if you see, these are steel beams that were completely encased in concrete. And those are all torched off. So it was a well-built bridge, lasted a lot of years because of its construction method, but they are making progress to go ahead and get that thing cleaned out and the new one going in. This is just a man bridge that they had installed temporarily to be able to cross from one side of the canal to the other, but the entire span is gone otherwise. So with that, that is all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Derek. My report, I hope, will be short. We talked about the dispatch, central dispatch, and like I say, I'd just like make sure everybody gets their questions answered, and if you don't have to get me any questions that Derek and I have to work on, then just let me know that you're ready to go. Same with the cell tower. Get me questions or let me know that you're ready to go, and we'll get that, because they're just two things that need to be moved on. Another project going on is DTE, and they're pulling that line from Trenton over to Grosse Ile. It's my understanding that they now know that the tunnel, and I'll say it's a tunnel that they're pulling this line through, that has to be absolutely clear, because once they start pulling, they can't stop. And supposedly that's ready to go, and they should be done with that project sometime in April here. And I think the last I heard was they were going to start pulling April 17th. And it shouldn't take, maybe a couple of days to pull it through. So that should be coming to an end, I hope. Centennial Farm, again, good comments, good discussion, good comments from the audience regarding Centennial Farm. But the fact is, guys, all those things that you're talking about are Rec's responsibility. They're not something that you would come up with, well, here's what our total expense is going to be. Well, we're going to build that into the contract for this operator, and he's going to cover it. Those expenses are going to be always going to be greater than whatever income you can get out of that contract. One thing that wasn't mentioned and is another nice thing that we put in there is there are escalators on the rent. It's not a flat rent for each year. The escalators bump that rent up each year, including if we were to go with an extension through that time. So there are some good things, but all those things you were talking about do have to be looked at. And they need to be looked at now, not when this contract is up. So good comments, thank you. The only other thing, we have a DDA merchants meeting. DDA has been around for a long time on Macomb, and one thing that they've been lacking in doing is getting feedback from the merchants. Anything that they do down there. The purpose of DDA is for those merchants down there, and they haven't been talking to them. So we're trying to get the other merchants involved. We have a meeting this Thursday at the VFW Hall where we've invited the merchants to be there, and that's what we're going for, is to get their feedback on things. We have all these little events down there, all these nice little parties, but we don't know what they're doing, if they're doing anything for the other businesses down there. And that's the purpose of DDA. It's not to just have a one-nighter. It's to do things that draw people down there, and we haven't gotten the feedback, so that's what we're hoping to get from them and get their cooperation, and we have that, as I say, this Thursday. Our regular DDA meeting is the fourth Thursday of the month. You're always invited to come to that. And with that, I am complete. Do I hear anything?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None again. We got a good record going with that.